Good morning. My name is Chasen Ishii, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd like to now call to order the March 6, 2024 at-large authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. And the time is now 10:02.
Thanks, Chair. In accordance with section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's at-large board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCDA communication staff is hosting this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clearer audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name each time prior to speaking. This is a public, in-person, and virtual meeting, so to prevent any distractions, if you are attending virtually and you are not a board member, staff member, or HCDA's Attorney General, please turn off your video during the meeting. If you want to provide oral testimony and you are attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you are attending in person, you will be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself and spell your name for the record. When 1 minute is remaining, 1 minute remains will be called out. And when 30 seconds is remaining, 30 seconds remain will be called out. When time has elapsed, time will be called out, after which you will have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your audio will be turned off. If you are attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind, this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting to another notice date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect the following members are present. Vice Chair Higa.
Vice Chair Higa.
Vice Chair Higa. We'll come back to him. Member Apo.
Present.
Member Miranda Johnson.
Present.
Member Anderson.
Present.
Member Strikes.
Present.
Member Blystone. Excused. Member Evans.
Present.
Member Suji. Member Sakura.
Present.
Member Ray. Member Leong.
Present.
And member Lipe is excused. Let's go back to Vice Chair Higa.
You dropped off.
I saw he's out this computer. Okay, but we can start.
If we have, assuming member Higa goes on, we have 9.
Okay, we can, when he signs back on, we'll just make sure, put it in the record. For today's meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony respectively. We have to wait for member Higa to vote on the.
Yeah.
So why don't we go, instead of approving the minutes first, we'll wait to Vice Chair Higa can be able to sign back on. Let's go to information and discussion.
I'm sorry, member Higa is present. My Wi-Fi cut out.
Okay, we have quorum now. Okay, so why don't we go with item number 1, the regular meeting minutes of January 3rd, 2024. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? There are no comments or questions. The minutes are approved as presented. Item number 2 on the agenda, information and discussion. Update on the proposed bills that affect the Hawaii Community Development Authority during the 2024 legislative session. So Executive Director Nakamoto, you want to go through this list?
I will. Thank you, Chair. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge, the help, from Garrett, Francine, Ryan, Tommy Lynn, Armaine, and actually the whole staff and kind of supporting, the legislative efforts, during this session. It's been, an interesting and challenging session to be sure. But I want to just thank all the staff for their support. It's been really, really, really great. So I'll start off with Senate Bill 3050 and House Bill 2361 relating to HCDA. So these are part of the administration's package. And these were the bills that provided really housekeeping and clarifying language that makes it clearer that we can provide assistance to other state and county agencies. That's something we're doing right now in helping other state agencies, but we just wanted to make it clearer. So both bills are moving along. The House bill passed third reading. The Senate bill actually is over on the House side already, so it has crossed over. They're gonna have to decide which of those bills are gonna survive. But that's moving along, so that should make it clearer for us. And then House Bill 1800, I'll have Garrett kind of do the update for that one and what's in the governor's supplemental budget.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Chair, members. The House Bill 1800 is the state budget. There's actually a hearing going on right now with the Committee on Finance. So our budget requests are included in that. For operations, same as every year, just our payroll or staff salaries, admin expenses, same amounts. In the CIP budget, we have several projects. The first one is UH West Oahu. The requested amount is 25 million. That's to continue with building the on-site infrastructure. The project that Mark will update us on later. There's a request for 12.125 million. That was actually approved last year, but it was converted from general funds to geo bonds. Same for Saratoga electric upgrades. Same Kalaeloa electrical upgrades, 4.5 million. It's in that category where it's reclassified from general to CIP. The last one is $1 million for the Heia Stream Access Road. That's in the budget this year. And that's all of our requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett.
For the record, member Suji has joined the meeting as well. So is there any questions for Garrett on this House Bill 1800 relating to the state budget?
Oh, Chair. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Member Apo?
Yeah, this might not be the right time to discuss this, but I'm a little confused, and maybe Craig, you can, maybe at some other time. I'm really confused in terms of the expanding role of HCDA into the framework of land use management within the other departments of the state, DLNR, Parks Division. We seem to be bopping into various areas. So again, maybe now is not the time, but I'm just curious. I withdraw my question. We can talk about it later. Sorry.
Chair, do you want me to try to?
Yes, so
Okay.
Executive Director.
Yeah, and so I think the question, Member Apo, if I understand it, is sort of trying to understand how HCDA and its role in other districts, besides Kalaeloa, Kakako, Lehunui, Heia. Is that kind of our question?
The reason I asked the question is we seem to be driven by the legislature in expanding our mission to move into other areas, like I guess we're going to Maui, we're in Kona now. And so it kind of like, and again, because I'm so new to, the whole framework and understanding, it's kind of like we're kind of creeping into other areas that that used to be governed or had, by other sort of departments. I'm not sure whether it's a legitimate question. I just sometimes get a little confused.
No,
And part of my confusion is that much of what we do seems to be driven by the legislature rather than administration. We seem to be more answerable to the legislature than to the governor. And that structure of state government. So I'm trying to understand what our role is, and looks like we're kind of rolling into a lot of places. So
I think it's a good question. Let me try to answer that right now. As far as the governor and the legislature, ultimately, I kind of view the governor as our ultimate boss. He's the head of the state. Ultimately, he is, the boss, ultimately. As far as the legislature, we were created by the legislature. We're a creature of the legislature, having been created in 1976. We get funded for the most part, by the legislature. So I think to a great extent, we are, like I said, a kind of a creature of the legislature. I'm gonna kind of break up the projects that you just talked about into two sort of groups, because I think it bears kind of separating out a little bit. So, when the legislature asks us to do something, or like get involved in a district like Kona or Panaeva, the way I view those requests by the legislature is that it's another community development district that they're sort of establishing for us, just like they established Kalailo at one time, just like they established Heia, the stadium district after Kakako. And my view of it, I could be totally off base about this, but the way I look at it is, if we tell the legislature, and community development districts is our main focus, if we start telling the legislature that we cannot do a community development district, or we don't want it, or it's not within our wheelhouse, I think at some point they might ask, well, then what is the need for HCDA? So I'm very reluctant to kind of say no to a community development district. Now, with something like Pulehunui, when we were given that district, we were fortunate to get funding to do it, and we're doing it with that funding right now. Mark will talk about the status of Pulehunui and what we're doing. The districts like Panaeva and Kona, I'll talk about that too, but we're also given those districts. One of them anyway is still alive. It doesn't have funding attached to it now, but it's something like Pulehunui. So I guess my answer is that it's kind of hard to say no to that kind of request. And I think if we start saying no too often, I think we might find ourselves, sort of somebody saying, well, why do we need you?
yeah,
Now,
I'm not opposed to it, so don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to understand it. But the second question, if we're gonna be requested to take over or to, move into these other areas, we need money. That's my point. We need some funding. The staff is overrun now. You guys are, God bless you all, but they need to provide more financial support. That's my question. If we're going to, what seems to be take on this huge role that targets certain parts of the state, give us the money to do it properly. Otherwise, it's just hammer-jang, half-ass. That's what I'm saying.
well,
Member Higo with a comment. Sorry,
Yes,
so member Po, just brief historical context on the role of the legislature vis-a-vis HCDA. In the original enabling statute of 1976, the intent of the establishment of HCDA was that the legislature could designate community development districts. So I actually view our charter as actually serving the legislature. That's very clear from the way the statute is set up, that the intention was that legislators, if they were able to secure a majority of support, could designate districts. So when we go into Kona or Pulakanui, these districts are all being sort of put under our jurisdiction to help with certain development projects. I do agree, Member Apo, that we do need to make sure that our funding is commensurate with the amount of responsibilities that the legislature assigns to us. But I think it is part of our charter to serve the legislature. We are one of those quasi agencies that is not directly responsible to the governor. And I think that actually makes us a more representative body of the different communities when they assign us these.
Thank you.
And for districts like, and I'll kind of go down the list a little bit since I'm trying to cover it anyway. But for districts like Kona and Panaeva, I know Kona has been shelved, so that's not moving, but Panaeva is still moving along. It's a district that's modeled after like Pulehunui, where the intent is to maybe build a jail there and try to develop underutilized land. Right now, there's no funding for it, but I also understand that the bill just kind of identifies 5 or 6 parcels of land and in the HCDA, and there'll be funding later. So I do take to heart the comment that we need to get, funding and staff for it, and I'll cover that in 3381. But I think we are a creature of the legislature. We serve the legislature, and if they want to add another district, I think the only thing we can say or should say is that we possibly need staffing or funding for it. Now, member Paul, for other things on the other sort of tranche of projects, things that we get into, like helping DLNR or helping other agencies, that's something that I think the board has through the strategic plan set out a vision that, we're gonna help when possible, according to staffing and capacity restraints, help other state agencies. And that's something that if the board wants to change that in the future, the board can, but that's in the strategic plan. And for those projects on a, one-off basis, I mean, we've helped DLNR with a market and feasibility study for Banyan Drive, Waiakea Peninsula. We're going to help the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation with building a new kitchen facility at Women's Correctional. So I think these are all the projects that the board has already approved. And again, if the board wants to change direction, we can, but that's the direction that was in it. And for those projects, we're going to help other state agencies. I think we can ask for, sort of fees according to DAG. We try to use DAG's fee schedule when we can. But I think it kind of helps for us to be available to other state agencies.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion.
Just
But
to add from a DLNR's perspective, I mean, since Craig brought it up, on the latest assistance that we had on the Banyan Drive one, that we did get we did provide contract funding for that. I will say though, Craig, you might want to, I'm not sure where this Panieva one came from, because that might, I was looking at the lands and how they're managed, and right now there's unencumbered conservation lands for a part of it, and some lands set aside to Department of Ag, and one set aside for the jail. Just letting you know. So I'm not sure how much income there is going to be able to generate from those lands.
Yeah, we'll see as it goes along.
Okay, thank you. So,
Thank you.
Nakamoto, you want to go through the?
Yeah. Yeah,
bills?
so HB 2776 is a CIP bill for the first representative district. That's Representative Nakashima's bill. And he has, in that bill, $1 million to fund us to do master planning and infrastructure master planning for the Waiakea Peninsula. So that remains to be seen how far that's gonna go, but I think that has to be, brought into the budget. And then the final bill, significant bill on the list is SB 3381, which I think Member Apol alluded to. This is the bill relating to Lahaina. This was a bill that was introduced by Senator McKelvey and Senator Dela Cruz. And what it does is and it just passed the Senate, by the way, and it's moving to the House. What it does is to create a community district that consists of basically the Moku of Lahaina, so 29 Ahupua'a. It creates a development district that's governed by a 9-member elected board. The board is so different from our other structures that it's set aside as not part of the HCDA board structure, the board structure that we're in, the Kakako, Kalailoa. It's a separate board. It will be separate from the other boards, operate independently. So the only connection will be the executive director, me for now, is gonna kind of be the link between the Lele District Board and the other boards and the agency. This is a bill, to your point, Member Apol. We were asked to help. I view this as a kind of a call to help on our part. And I felt that, we had to help, not had to help, but it was something that we should do, like other agencies have done, OPSD, HHFDC, other agencies have done. And I have asked for funding. So we have, in the bill right now, we have 9 FTEs for the position. We have funding for operations. I think it's about 800,000 and several $1 million for a planning effort and community engagement. I've also made clear, to your point, that if that funding and staffing goes away at some point because it gets taken out of the bill on the House side, that it would cause me to have a lot of concerns about the bill and whether or not we can implement it, because we definitely cannot implement that bill if it becomes law with the staffing we have. And there's a lot of community concerns about this bill in so many different ways. There's distrust of state government, distrust of county government, distrust of HCDA and all that. And yet there's some support too from it. And a lot of people who are on the fence, they have distrust of an elected board, distrust of condemnation powers, all those things. Garrett, myself, Francine and Ryan went to a community meeting a couple of weeks ago in Lahaina. We actually met at Napili Noho. It was organized by a community member. So we spoke with about 40 community members. They asked us a lot of questions, but it was a good opportunity to inform them, not persuade them about the bill, inform them, and then to give them a chance to get to know us, who we are, and what we do, and try to explain to them that, we're not necessarily the HCDA that they think of, the HCDA did Kakako and so forth. That's the sort of the perception. But there's a lot of time left in the legislature. We're halfway. So a lot of things could happen to this bill, including, even if it passes, the governor may not approve it. But I think with the help of staff, we're trying to navigate our way through this bill as best we can. I've talked to the mayor, Mayor Bisson, sort of about this bill, just to touch bases. I'm gonna have a meeting with Planning Director Blystone in the coming weeks, just to talk to her about their efforts and just try to keep the county involved with this as much as possible, knowing that this bill may not pass in the end. But it's definitely been a challenging legislative session so far with this.
One more question interesting about the elected board. Is it compensated?
No, it's not.
So it'll be a volunteer board, yes, but they're elected.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that this elected board, as Craig had mentioned, will not be a part of the current HCDA at-large group.
It will not be.
It will not be. It will be a separate Lele elected board.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and the board, if elected, would be starting from, they would hold an election, a special election in January of 2025. And there's a lot of questions about the elected board, who can run, who, if it's resident. So I know Chair has fielded a bunch of calls about this, I'm sure others have as well, but this is how I'm approaching the bill. This is how I'm approaching the bill, and we'll see what happens in the House. No guarantees it's gonna pass the House, and there's no guarantees that the governor will sign it, that's for sure.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Is there any questions on executive director's updates on these bills for the legislative session?
Sure.
Yes.
Right. Actually, more so as a comment, but I guess if I'm understanding this correctly, for the Senate Bill 3381 and that community district board functions separately and not under this kind of general board umbrella as do the other districts. I guess my concern is that you or the administration would be getting conflicting directives. And so I don't know how or if it's appropriate for this board to maybe provide comments on such a bill, since that would directly impact us.
Yeah, the language, thank you for the question, Patrice. I think like I said, there's a lot more legislative session, about halfway to go with this, what could happen. I should have said this, and I should have gone back to the beginning. The way this bill was created was because the Senate Ways and Means staff had gotten an invitation from some of the Lahaina members to come to the district at some of the, community members' invitation to come to the district. So they kind of talked about things and this sort of self-governing local township kind of model came up. So a lot of the structural elements that you see in this bill, or that I'm talking about, like the local board, keeping it separate, out of sort of HCD, the HCD board, I think serves a couple purposes. Mainly, I think it is consistent with the community's view, at least some of the community, with how this board should be governed. And it's really their sort of vision. It started out as like a appointed board for now, and then transitioning to an elected board. Then it kind of not changed into an all elected board right away. Now, I'll say this, Member Strings, it's to say that it's gone like an elected board. It doesn't mean that everybody trusts an elected board. In fact, some people didn't even trust an appointed board. They had concerns about an appointed board and the governor appointing members of the board, who's gonna nominate those. So, it's all that. But I think it was intentionally done this way, also just to keep, it's so different that I wouldn't wanna put it under the authority of the other HCDA boards, in this structure. If it turned back to a more traditional structure like we have now, then that would be okay. Then we would treat it like any other community development district. But then if we did that, I don't know if the community would be aligned with that either.
Right, I guess just the main concern is that if they're on equal footing as this general board, they're pulling administrative resources to fulfill, their priorities, but then the general board has its own priorities. There's kind of this possible tug of war and conflict of
Yeah.
interest set up.
Yeah, I'm hoping that doesn't happen because like I said, I didn't want to there was no capacity to do this with the existing staff. So that's why we had, I asked for nine positions. If I don't get those 9 positions, I don't know if I can do this. And as far as the tug of resources, I think, at least for the present time, I mean, I'll be administering, the staff that goes along with this, so if we hire new staff, there will be HCDA staff employees, reporting to me as a separate team that's likely to be based on Maui. So I'm hoping that there's not gonna be a tug of resources or conflict in resources. Now, having said that, it's possible that there could be some overlap with the staff here, and I'm hoping, and I've talked to Garrett about this, and I'm hoping that the overlap will be very minimal, because I don't wanna implicate, the ASO staff or implicate Mark's time or too much of Ryan's time. It's gonna be that. Now, in the very beginning, and I'm sorry to belabor this point, Mr. Streets, but in the beginning, until an elected board is constituted, right? In January of 2025, from the time that the bill is approved by the governor, if it is, right? During that interim time, there is language in the bill at our suggestion to allow the HCDA staff, existing HCDA staff, to do certain pre-work kind of things like groundwork, maybe set up an office there, do other kinds of things. So we're gonna have to do some of that will implicate current HCDA resources and staff. But I'm hoping that that's a temporary thing and we can hire, a staff. I know it's not gonna be easy to hire a staff that will be based on Maui, but that's my intent. And even though this bill doesn't include the county in it also, there's no county representation on the board. As you can see, it's all 9 elected members. My intent is to try to pull in the county and make them inclusive and try to include businesses and philanthropy, because the philanthropy is an important part of this, because there's 100 million state money to match 100 million in philanthropy. That's one of the aspects of it. Also, Mount Lahaina it takes everyone to rebuild Lahaina, including businesses and people who are involved. So the bill has a provision in there that allows the board to create one or more advisory groups, committees, and that language was suggested by us to make sure that the board can create a committee, a subcommittee, to kind of look at things, maybe advise on things, just on an advisory basis. So my intent is to be as inclusive as I can with the county, with businesses, people outside the district, maybe informally, but maybe formally through this advisory group. So it's been a challenge, Member Streets, but I think, we got a bill that was in its, in the initial form, and then tried to kind of mold it into not mold it, but try to work with the committee and try to create a bill that's a little more workable for us. It's not perfect. It definitely is not perfect. But I kind of view this as our call to help for Lahaina.
Thanks for that.
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Members, are there any other questions or comments? Is there any public testimony? There's no public testimony. Is there any other questions, members? If not, let's go to the next item. Item number 3, presentation by HCDA staff on the status of funding and procurement of various transit-oriented development, TOD, and Pilelui related projects.
Good morning, board members. I'm Mark Okota, Director of Capital Improvements for HCDA. So I'll do a summary of what is already stated in the staff report, including in your packets. Today I'll go over the status of procurement at Pulehunui, Central Maui, and the TOD transit-oriented development projects that HCD is undergoing this year. So Pulehunui, which is not included in the staff report, the current status of the infrastructure development at Pulehunui is we've been allocated $64 million from the legislature to conduct planning, design, and construction at the Pulehunui Community Development District in Central Maui. The RFP was issued by HCDA staff at the end of last year. It's a design build RFP. The anticipated award date is March 15th of this year. I'd like to highlight a few items included in the staff report regarding the TOD procurements.
Sorry, Mark.
Yes.
Can you, just for maybe Tim's benefit too, maybe just talk about Pulehunui a little bit more and how, what's sort of planned there and how it's gonna support other state projects.
Okay.
Sorry, just a quick one.
Yeah, Pulehunui broadly, we are looking at developing infrastructure that will support state parcels and developments in the district. That includes the LNR's industrial park that has already gone through EIS, possibly relocation of the Wailuku jail and satellite judiciary complex to support it at Pulehunui. We've been working with Maui County to look at also the Raceway Park and see how that can be utilized better. In general, we also are looking at regional infrastructure, like the highway there that needs improvements to support the district. It also supports adjacent lands that are owned by Department of Hawaiian Homelands. So they own parcels south and northwest of the district, so across the highway as well. So in bigger picture, there's a lot of state parcels and interests around and in Pulehunui that the infrastructure will support.
Thanks,
So,
Mark.
so they are looking at potentially relocating the judiciary court system there, or is it an addition?
That was something brought up, that we looked at in the planning process. But, some feedback from stakeholders is that it's something to support the jail rather than, busing, inmates back and forth, back to Wailuku.
Was there any other discussions on further expanding that to maybe even halfway type situations or other programs in the area?
You mean transitional
Transitional
programs?
programs?
That hasn't been brought up yet.
Because I know there were some discussions as well previously.
But Mark, in the planning process, so it's a kind of like a plan, design, build.
Correct.
And these are funds that lapse in June of 2024. So that's why we're kind of rushing to get this done. So, but in the planning process, some of that, discussions may come up about what the intended uses are. Is it going to be a halfway house, a jail, or judiciary? So that'll come out in the sort of the planning process.
Yeah, so both HCDA and our design build contractor will engage county and state agencies to, as well as community members.
So if I'm hearing you correct, so you're saying the funding expires in June?
It has to be encumbered
Encumbered
by
by
June 30th, 2024.
So even more, so it's critical that we establish the board there.
It is, it really is, and that's why we have, on that note, there's been, I think, 5 or 6 names submitted, 6 names submitted to the governor's office for 2 community Pulehunui members, so that's with the governor's office. And, yeah, I know it's top of mind for them, but I reminded the governor's office, boards and commissions about it, and asking them to make sure we get 2 names submitted for confirmation this session. But yes, it's critical.
Okay.
It is critical.
Thank you.
Ibale Kapulam, sorry.
Okay, TOD procurement, Ibale Kapalama. We have an RFP out now, anticipated award date for that is April 18th of this year. That will include electrical upgrades to support state projects and housing in Iwalai and Kapalama.
And also county owned land in.
Correct. So with the county's recent purchases of land in the area, we look to work with county and see how we can also support housing development in Iwalai.
So that fund also, just for the board's information, those were appropriated in last session. And those were in general funds, so A funds. So that's like cash. So those funds, that funds, and then funds for East Kapolei, University of Hawaii West Oahu need to be encumbered by June 30th of 2024, this year.
Correct.
And we've been working with city, Kevin O'Shea and others on MOA for that project. Thanks.
Yeah, the East Kapolei Infrastructure Master Plan, as Craig mentioned, what is cash funds, so that will be encumbered. Actually, it's also already been encumbered by OPSD. They've done an RFP for planning and EIS. University of Hawaii West Oahu Infrastructure, we're working with UH now to sign a MOA for that infrastructure work. That will be on-site infrastructure on UH parcels. So roadway, utility infrastructure to support HHFDC and UH's efforts for housing near the campus.
Qualikai, along Qualikai Parkway near the Keone Station.
The last two, Saratoga Avenue electrical upgrades and Kalailoa electrical upgrades. And Garrett has mentioned before HB 1800 includes funding for that. Kalailoa electrical upgrades, we do have $500,000 in cash funds that we need to encumber by this year. That's for planning of electrical and other infrastructure upgrades in Kalailoa. And I can answer any other questions that the members may have.
I have one more question real quick on the preliminary. So how have we been collaborating with the city?
The Maui County.
The county of Maui. Yeah, we've been meeting with them as well and. having some
Since
discussions.
actually 2022, we've been in contact with county agencies on Maui to discuss different initiatives they had planned for Central Maui and actually Kihei, because Kihei is included in the South Maui Community Plan. So Kihei and Pulehunu is one long-range plan for Maui County. So we've been engaging with the planning office there, the water department, HECO on Maui, so the utilities as well.
Board members, are there any other questions for Director Hakoda? No? If not, is there any public testimony? No public testimony? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, next item on the list, monthly financial highlights for January 2024, Executive Director. Report.
Yeah, so the financial highlights are here and then in tab 4, and Garrett's available for any questions on this.
Any questions in regards to the financial highlights of the report submitted by Garrett Sasaki, CFO, Chief Financial Officer? If not, is there any public testimony? No public testimony, okay. All right, well, members, thank you for those who have joined us on Zoom or in person. This concludes our business for today, and the meeting is now adjourned, and the time is not 10:46. Thank you.
We'll reconvene at 11.
Right.
Thank you.